We're recording in this format now.
Okay, so the ProSAP is about to vote on, we are voting to approve the right-of-way vacation for South Johnson Street. And we will follow up with any further recommendations after this first formal vote. So if you don't mind, I'll just run down alphabetically. Atashna, do you vote to approve the right-of-way vacation?
No.
Brian?
No.
Daniel?
No.
Eric?
No.
John?
No.
Myself? No. And then shall we have a vote whether we would like to add a condition to that?
Not a condition, we just vote.
Recommendation.
Yeah, a recommendation
that-
on the non-approvable. Okay, so our recommendation, does ProSAB recommend that town therefore develop a formal maintenance plan for this lot?
Yes.
Tasman? Brian?
Yes.
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes. Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes.
Myself? Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was a very thorough and kind of insightful discussion, and I think that kind of sets an important precedent for town properties and the future of parks and open space.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's anything further, now would be the time to add. It looks like this will be, something that we'll readdress in further meetings. And if not, we will move on to the request from the Police Department and Public Works to address town codes and park and public land rules. So we just had some feedback from Larry Johns and from the Parks lead, Nikki Dunn, about they were unable to locate any specific codes relating to general town parks.
Yeah, so what I brought up here, I just want to show you on the screen. So the only regulations we have in municipal code is regarding the skate park. And as you can see, there's just a lot of kind of do's and don'ts. We can't really hold Topeka or Gershio or any other park to these standards because they don't exist in code as just a public space. And so where this first came up is just people parking in Topeka overnight. We technically really can't hold them accountable to this kind of dawn to dusk thing because there's nothing in code stipulating that. And so we're kind of looking to see if ProSAB wants to maybe take similar regulations that the skate park has and work on them to at least have in place for Gershio and Topeka for the time being, and then potentially, or all parks and all park facilities, so that we have something to hold people accountable to. Whereas right now it's like it walks a pretty gray line for police department to enforce, unless you're violating trail camping code. So there really is benefit to having guidelines like we have here for the skate park.
Are these guidelines or are these rules or laws to be enforced?
Thanks, Natasha. I said guidelines. I was like, wrong word. It is. This is our Nederland municipal code. These are the rules to be enforced. So law enforcement can ticket someone. Obviously, we're going to ask them to move, but they have the authority to ticket someone should they be there after hours, or should they be in violation of any one of these unlawful activities. We don't necessarily have that same power in Topeka Park or Gershio. Okay, so what you're asking, or what they are asking from us, is to codify regulations. Yes, that's the best way to do enforcement. Right, to maybe take this, and perhaps it's not just the skate park. These are regulations for all public places that are considered to be parks. They're on the however we define that. This section of code would be updated to capture everything. Okay.
I mean, just
Well,
from
its time has
saying it, I
come.
feel like there should be an exemption because there are evening events that are held in these two locations, or there could be, and there has been, and there should be in the future. So it seems like this Article B would prohibit that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that we should use these any of this language. I think that we should have regulations like the
Specific
skate
to
park has
Yes.
regulations, but I don't
So
think
this
we
is
should use
just a
any of the
guide
language
for
of
us to
skate
go
park.
by. This is
Right.
just a
Yes.
guide for us to go by,
But I
to
actually
get
don't
an
think
idea
we
of
need to come up with this
what
ourselves.
this is.
I think we can look at the municipal codes of other municipalities who regulate their parks and who have those codes
Oh,
in place
yeah.
already. And we can take maybe something that's more directly related to parks use and adjust that and apply that to Nederland rather than just looking at our own skate park code. I think that would be the way to
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
So for like Scott Carpenter in Boulder, that just comes to mind. Scott Carpenter has been a work in progress for many, many, many years. So at this point, I think they have it down. So we might want to take a look at that.
I think
We
there are
have a
always
clerk.
some.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think there are some great rules of thumb to go by when you're looking for references on these sorts of things, and that is,
Mhm.
identify similar sized municipalities that have a similar sized police department, and look at
Yeah.
what they're doing. Maybe even reach out to them and ask how it's working out before we bake anything into an ordinance. But then also to look at nearby municipalities and see what they regulate and what they require, so that we're not too out of sync with the towns that are very close to us, and so people don't get confused by different regulations. So I think we do both of those things. We could
When you say
end up with something that's good.
municipality, and I don't mean to sound ignorant, but when you say municipality, you're talking about like small towns.
Yeah, I mean a town or a city, not a county.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I was going to say the clerk. So there's a clerk listserv that is often used to exchange municipal codes or policies. So I think one of the best ways to start is for me to send out an email to them and see what we get, versus people just kind of starting to dig on their own. That's often helpful in similar sized communities.
That makes sense.
Oh, yeah, yeah. What did you call that, Miranda?
It's called a clerk's listserv. So it's every clerk in the state of Colorado receives emails that go through this listserv.
Oh, so you can pick and
So-
choose the towns that you want to focus on?
Well, I'll send it to everyone, but ask for like-sized communities.
Oh, okay. That's excellent.
And yeah, I would really like to hear like this, because you can always put a code in, right, that sounds good on paper, but then in practice, like what is it actually like to enforce it for a small police department? Is it possible? Like there could be a better way to write it that makes it easier for them and maybe even produces the same results. So I think that we need to be careful, really careful with municipal ordinance and make sure that we know we've done our research, we've done our due diligence, and we're not making laws that can't be enforced and that people will find it difficult to follow.
Yes,
Yeah.
there should not be any laws that are not enforceable. And I'm also very hesitant to make this overabundance of rules.
Yeah.
I think we should be very judicious with it.
I
It should
agree.
be in simple language, and it should not be anything that is not enforceable.
Yeah.
Something to consider is that the likelihood of someone camping in a park over which ProSab might have some sort of jurisdiction or discretion to make recommendations is probably less common than someone who might be sleeping in a parking lot near a park. And I don't know whose jurisdiction that falls under. It's probably not ProSab's necessarily to make that recommendation, but as we consider regulations, that's something to think about. How do we define a park, and how do we define camping or whatever the language might be?
Well, we'll say, I know that before the willows were cut back on the river, I know Nikki is kind of, and I've, some of the historical knowledge is that there used to be a lot of camping and people sleeping in those willows, and they even dragged out like old like mattresses that were placed in there and things. So kind of.
I can say that I have interviewed someone on camera who was living in the Willows down there, and that was only a few years ago. So it's while it is less frequent, it's
No.
definitely not impossible. But it's not that I want to necessarily create a camping ban in the
No.
parks in the same way that has been, much criticized across the nation. With cities attempting to do those kinds of things. What we need to do is make a set of codes that actually work for our law enforcement, for the things that they're actually actively trying to do, and not try to predict future, problems and create laws for them before they even happen.
I think like Miranda said, it's the RVs that have been parking overnight in the parking lot that
so
has been.
It's much less unhoused folks that are the problem in this situation, and rather it's recreators who are using Nederland in general just as their own personal RV park, and that is starting to really frustrate people. So I think we need to just have some clear and simple regulations around that.
I think some of the reason for that, though, is because, people don't think about the fact that, up in the mountains, we are not like fake towns like Vale or, certain towns that were created for the ski industry. We're historic towns. By our nature, we are very small. And even with our growth, we don't have RV parks. So a 40-foot RV or a cab over camp truck pulling a 30-foot camper coming up into the mountains expecting to have a dump station and a water line and stuff is, I think that people do that and they don't even think about it, and that's why we end up with them in the parking lots.
Yeah.
So something to consider is that I assume that regardless of what regulations we adopt, we still have discretion as to whether or not we enforce those regulations. So I think it could be up to an individual police officer to make a judgment call about whether or not to issue a ticket to someone who appears to be a tourist as opposed to someone who appears to be an unhoused person. So I don't think we can codify that necessarily.
I agree, Brian, and that's definitely our police office department's position. I think where this came up, though, is they did come across someone who was clearly kind of taking advantage of the situation. Who, they tried to do the best they could with community policing and asking them to move and giving them alternative resources of where to go, but chose to kind of ignore that and kept just coming back to Chipeta and making that their overnight staying site. And so that's where it gets a little tricky because we don't have the code to work with that.
Well, it's always good to have that discretion, give certain people warnings, give certain people tickets. One of my concerns with that is I don't want the intention in some unconscious way to be a revenue generator.
No, I will tell you, in doing budgets with the police department, that is not a part of that culture, I guess, to say. There's kind of an acknowledgement of what do they need to survive, but I would say our police department does not operate in a let's grab as much money as we can.
Okay, well, that just needed to be said, though.
No, I think that's very valid.
Yeah. So this sounds like something, again, that we're going to need to kind of do the research on and circle back on once we've looked into it a little bit more, and once, Miranda, you've got a little bit extra work to do.
So I just sent that email. So as I start to collect other municipalities' ordinances or regulations, I'll compile ones that seem adequate for our size and what we have, our situation, and send them over to you to review.
And it would be
I think that's wonderful.
So it would be really nice, Miranda, if the PD had kind of already weighed in on some of those recommendations, so that we're not kind of thinking, well, what does Larry think about this?
Yep, sounds great.
In other words, Eric, are you saying maybe when these come in from the other municipalities,
have the PD
review them?
also.
what they
Exactly,
feel
because
is,
what's the point in
Yeah.
us debating something that the PD doesn't even want to enforce? Like that wouldn't
Yeah.
make sense.
excellent idea. Mhm.
Yep, sounds good.
It also, it's good because it's engaging the PD in something that they have, have a stake in. Because they have to enforce these, so it's good that they brought this to the table, and we're pretty much coordinating all this with them.
Yes, it's definitely, this kind of step one in a much larger picture that'll go before Board of Trustees and Planning Commission, just kind of about camping and parking and how convoluted that code is and that it contradicts itself numerous times over. This is kind of that introductory statement or
Yeah.
sentiment to that bigger discussion.
Excellent.
Great. Yeah, I'm really glad that Mickey and Larry brought this to our attention because it's a pretty big oversight. Fantastic. And that'll help.
Mhm.
That will help their jobs massively.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And just to make sure that this is out there, right? Federal judges have already declared camping bans, for instance, like the one that Denver had, as unconstitutional. So we should just be very careful about implementing anything that even approaches that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is not a war on unhomed people at all.
We're not going to be having the police do sweeps.
No. And that's not what they're interested in either.
Yes.
Yeah, keep it realistic.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this one?
Mhm.
This will be again coming back next meeting. In which case, let's truck on to a Brian and Eric issue. I mean, I'm not sure how much you've got kind of that'll move forward, but anything that you've got on the Trails Master Plan now would be a fantastic time.
Cool. I can keep it short. Eric and I will be meeting next Wednesday to kind of formalize some next steps, because in full disclosure, we have both not done anything between last time we got together and today. We'll hopefully keep some momentum going, getting together next week and figuring out what the next steps look like.
Cool.
And I just pulled the results for you. I don't remember what our count was last time, but you have 27 responses, with the most recent being July 5th. And then there were 2 on the 16th or the 17th of June, which was the last time we met. So I don't know if this included.
Yeah, I mean, again, actually, I think this was the one thing. I couldn't find a link to the Trails Master Plan survey on the main ProSab page. Did I just miss that?
So there was some confusion. I actually learned this too yesterday, and so I'm glad you brought this up, that there was some confusion with Peter and he put it under GoCo. And so I did ask him to move it under ProSab, although I'm just going to do it because we're
yeah, fantastic. I think because I went to look for it, I was like, oh, let me get the link so I could share this. And then I was like, oh, I can't. It's not on the ProSab page.
It's on GoCo too, but now it'll be on both.
Okay, great. Yeah, so once we get that link, I know, Natasha, you'd suggested that we put it out like a blast in newsletters, and I think that's still something that we would love to do. So I'm happy to
Do you
send
have a preference of where I put it? Do you want it like just right up top before your mission, so it's like in your face, or?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Done.
Yeah,
Okay, it's there. Blast away.
Thank you.
Yeah, it would be great to get up to 50 responses.
I think we can do once we get it out to like the MFP newsletters and the seniors and the teams.
Sure.
I think once we start doing that.
Amen. I think that's one of the things that we talked about last meeting that we haven't done yet is kind of organizing which interest groups might be interested in spreading the word for us, to get the survey more widely distributed to their interests and stakeholders. So yeah, we'll try to manage that on Wednesday, make a list of folks, and then start getting in touch with them. But yes, if there's a place, well, we can obviously point them straight to the survey link, but if it's also readily accessible from somewhere on the Town of Nederland website, that might make it easier for someone to go out and find it themselves.
Great. Yeah, I know it's on our main page. I think that's going to really help.
So I do think that even 27 responses gives us some fodder to work with in
Yeah,
terms of starting to craft an agenda for maybe a couple of public charrettes.
I agree.
I think
Frankly,
we also need to put some kind of a little blurb in the mountain there, because, there's been communication problems and there's been concerns about, people not doing enough communicating across the area. So I think
that's great. Tasha, do you still occasionally contribute to the Mountaineer?
Did
You
anyone?
mean
I wrote a big
with my
article.
last 2 letters.
I wrote an article about the GoCo grant. I know Barb said she was either going to get it in last week or this week, all about the upcoming. So that should be kind of getting a bit more awareness.
Yeah,
But
one thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start when I kind of get I've been all over the place with different things, but one of the things I'm going to be working on is writing up a report. She said that she wanted reports from ProSab. So I'm going to be writing up a second quarter report. Is that what you mean,
that
Miranda?
would be
Yeah,
to put
that's
it.
what
Yeah.
I thought. I thought you were going to be sort of our official liaison to
The
the Mountaineer we. So if you do end up doing that sometime in the next few weeks, it would make sense to say like, hey, there's also this open survey and
Yes.
list the website.
I will be doing that in the next couple of weeks. I hope to do that. And my
Great.
style is to make bullet points. And Jesse said that Barb wants
Like full sentences.
yes, and I'm not good with focusing with that.
Passionate. Yeah, she sent me all like that did like the groundwork of that time, and then I just turned it into full
Yeah, so if
paragraphs.
we can collaborate with that, Jesse.
Yeah, let's do that again. That worked out.
Okay. My one concern was like the last time, I tend to get a lot of anxiety, but I work well with it. I work well under the pressure. And I wrote that up, and then she didn't put it in for like 2 months. And frankly, it pissed me off. It was like, why bother? You want us to do this? You want to engage the community this way? And then you keep finding different reasons to put it off.
I mean, that may have been partly my fault too. I think it took me a while to translate it into paragraph form. But the other thing I would like to do too is get a QR code for it. That would be good to put in the article.
What's that?
I can do that really.
Yeah,
really.
okay, you can do it. I can do it.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah, super easy. It's just like the thing that they scan on their phones instead of having to type all the words out to get.
Mind you, the Venn diagram overlap between Mountaineer readers and people who can scan QR codes is probably not substantial.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, some kind of even posters that would be great too, just to have like
flyers by whatever
Mhm.
means of communication that exists. We should avail ourselves of it, especially if it's free.
Brian, I meant to send you some photos too, which I need to do that. Just some snazzy pictures to put up on the survey trails.
Oh, yeah, great. That sounds awesome.
Okay. Any updates? Anything else on that one for now? Otherwise, that's going to be something again we come back to.
Yeah, I think that's good for now.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Pocket Parks Bike Park. Do we have any updates on that? I know Miranda, you town staff were kind of working on identifying that, so it looks like that is underway.
It is, and so our anticipated completion is the end of this month, early August. We are bringing that before the Board of Trustees in August, and would like to also bring it to ProSab. So we are on track to do that. I think we're looking at bringing it to the board on the 17th and ProSab on the 9th.
Great.
Okay, and everybody got the post that Miranda sent out on the blurb that I wrote about forming a subcommittee?
Yes, yeah, I just got that, a couple of days
Okay,
ago.
so when and where should we go with that?
Do you want to read it, Teshna, for those who may not have seen it?
Oh, I don't
I
have
have
it.
it pulled up. I'm happy to share my screen.
Okay, that would be
here.
great. It's like-
I don't know if everyone can see that.
Cool.
And also, Jesse, for the content, you know, I've cited Jesse and what he's going to do, but just, you know, look at it and make sure it's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does a good job in kind of requesting, you know, more kind of people to get involved and some more input. I think it's pretty effective in the content.
I think it might be better just
Maybe
to
not
remove
specifying.
the specificity of the name there. Like I think we should maybe remove Jesse's name and the name of the company and instead say that like what would you call it? Like
A generous benefactor?
yeah, or just like there you know, among interest in doing this and from you know local businesses or something like that.
Yeah, a
We have
local
the,
business.
we have this opportunity, and then the rest of your text is I think brilliant. But I don't think we should rope Jesse into it in this way because I think he might not like.
He would. I think he would. Yeah, I think he would
Yeah.
rather not be kind of personally put out there like that, and also maybe reduce, maybe just not have this a specified number of the stakeholders and just seek stakeholders, in
Okay,
general. 'Cause it
so,
could be parents, but it could be the kids themselves. It could be teenagers. It could be,
yes.
you know, young
So
adults
Jesse Severs of High Performance Earthworks,
Put
take
that.
that out and say a local business.
Yeah.
Okay, and take out the ProSab is seeking 5 parent stakeholders and just have it read the ProSab is seeking stakeholders.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Stakeholders.
Okay, and then hold off on it until until what's done.
No, I think that's good to go. I mean, it looks good to start kind of circulating and just to try and get some interest.
Okay, so once I make those changes, can we have small flyers put up, like at the post office, community center?
Yeah, I think it might be kind of worthwhile just to add, like, get that and then the trails master plan, like kind of combine the two and get some flyers with both of that, the stuff that we're seeking input on, and get them circulated together.
Oh, so instead of an 8.5 by 11 with just one, we split the
Two.
pages for 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea, Jesse. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So Natasha, once you have this updated too, send it to town hall or town staff so we can put it on the website and Facebook.
Okay, so I'll just send it to you, Miranda?
Yeah, that's fine.
You can CC me too. I'd be happy, like, and I can
Okay,
work on the flyer that way.
okay. And in line with this, I want to ask about something that I don't know if it's still ongoing or needs follow-up. But a while back, one of the ProSab members, I don't remember who, after our discussion with Randy Lee, was going to gather all the historic skate park documents and put them into some form for future discussion about rolling it into, because the nonprofit is going to dissolve, rolling it in somehow into our agenda for our future Parks and Rec Department or something. Is that still happening?
So he did send us the documents back in, let's see, January of this year. Now it was all on a link. If you click on that link though, it is officially expired. So if we need him to reactivate this, I'm not sure how that's, we can do that, but then I believe you only have a set amount of time to access the information.
Okay, but who on
I did-
ProSab was doing that?
No,
I
I
don't
don't think it was. I don't think it was anyone that was doing that. I think
Right.
it was just a request that Randy send that information to ProSab because we were just looking for the information.
Oh, I thought Brian or Daniel was going to
Do something with that
pick
information.
up
No, I
the
think
ball on that, organize the information.
No, and I seem to remember clicking on the link too, and there wasn't a whole lot.
Okay. Yeah, I just clicked on it and it's expired now.
I clicked on that link and there was almost nothing actually
Nothing.
there.
I feel like I clicked on there too, and there
Okay.
was very little on there.
Well,
in
I
the
seem
first
to
place when I
remember
first-
Randy Lee saying that there wasn't much on the website, that he had boxes of documents that ProSab, somebody on ProSab was going to organize.
Yeah, I think you're right. I do recall that.
I recall that as well.
Yeah.
But he, as far as I know, he never sent anything to us.
No.
That's the case. I followed up with him via email and said, hey, if you can help supply this to us, we can help figure out how to digitize it and get that information up on the Town of Ned website. And I haven't heard back, and I haven't followed up.
Okay.
I will
Could
say
you
we're in
follow
the-
up with him?
Mm.
The
'Cause
one thing
that's-
I guess the one thing I would say is we're in the middle of switching to a new website. So even if you did it now, we wouldn't be able to take the information because we're kind of in this weird hybrid space. And so I'm not sure how urgent this is, but just kind of that caveat that whatever you're digitizing to just needs to stay on like an external hard drive for now.
Well, I think the first thing is getting the boxes of information and organizing them. And then moving forward with it. My concern is that this is something that is important that we discussed a while ago, and I just don't want to see the ball dropped on it.
Yeah, I'll track down the correspondence and see if I can bring it back to life.
Yeah, kind of reread that stuff.
Yeah, you have to, Brian, you know where Randy lives? I think you might do better to call him.
That could be.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's plenty. We got plenty to work on in that department
Okay,
too.
yeah.
Okay, so this is again, it's kind of an ongoing thing. We'll definitely
Yeah.
this will definitely come back up in future meetings. So it's back in the radar, and it all ties together too. So
Yeah, yeah.
good point. Anything else on this one? It looks like we can
Nope.
maybe move on. Resilient communities, the Netherlands Shoreline Trails Restoration and Stewardship Project. We do have a couple of updates on the site plan. The main one being some of City of Boulder's kind of input. The City of Boulder has had some a lot of caveats and kind of restrictions and conditions upon the site plan that we presented. I think everyone on the subcommittee kind of wishes that this had been brought up a year ago or 2 years ago. They came up with some conditions like it would need to be patrolled for 24 hours a day. And
What would need to be patrolled 24 hours a day?
the whole park area. Yeah, Miranda, do you want to?
Specifically, their property. And so let me pull this up. So basically with the development of the parking lot area, they had given us a lot of kind of contingencies that we would address some drainage issues over on this side of town, which is not even town property. That we would address kind of issues with the culvert and just doing a lot of work on their property that we felt was above and beyond even the scope of the grant itself. And it was all tied to this parking lot. So in talking with Eric and Jesse, it felt best to just remove this parking lot altogether. We will revisit it at a later time. It doesn't scratch the bathrooms. We still have the bathrooms, but in essence, the trail will stop here, the south of what was the new parking lot. So then the only thing we're really asking of City of Boulder is to develop this trail along the outer edge on their property. And that makes it a lot easier because we're not asking for all these new pieces. So we are scratching that, and then they asked us to remove the culvert, and it simplified our IGA. Currently with the parking lot, they could have potentially held us up for 6 to 9 months on this just because city moves real slow. It just was in our best interest to get rid of this for the time being.
Did they want anything doing with the culvert there near where the art installation is slated to go?
They wanted it to go away. In the sense of we won't touch it, it'll just be what it is right now. And
But I
so
mean, that's why the whole field is waterlogged, because that culvert is blocked.
so that there's going to be some additional work done for water mitigation here, but they did want, just like us labeling this as a culvert, to be taken out, and that they will work on addressing the drainage issues.
Okay.
So more to come. I mean, that we're not even done with the IGA, which is why if you go over there, you're only going to see work done over here. So I'll get some more clarification on the culvert piece. But for this year and this year only, you're just going to see the Gershio. But if you've been over there, you've seen tons of work being done. There's some nice trails going in.
Although, are we
but we
also
still
going to see? Are we going to see the trail at the north edge of the wastewater treatment plant there?
Yes,
to-
that's
okay.
Nikki does feel that she can get this part of the park done as well.
Okay.
So that eliminates the condition of 24-hour monitoring.
Yeah, so it was 24-hour monitoring by our police department, which of course we all know sometimes we only have one on, and that's really impossible. And then again, a lot of these stipulations on us addressing their runoff problem.
It was like runoff between the post office and
Yeah,
the
it was
the
this whole
mountain.
area right here, which has nothing to do with the park.
Nothing to do
at
with the
all.
grant or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just felt like there really was an overreach there on their part. And
Yeah.
while of course we wish we had more time to negotiate that out, we don't. And so just felt easiest to pull this out. And once we did, they agreed to remove all of their stipulations for this upper level.
So it sounds like it was a bit of a territorial thing.
Yeah, it's odd. It's so
Yeah.
we're again, and even to Jesse's point, we've got they made those requests that we remove these two things from the site plan, but we still have to work out the trails and still this drainage problem and get an IGA in place to access the area. Currently, the way their IGA read was that we were going to ask for permission every time we wanted to go through the parking lot to access the bathroom. And that's just like not realistic, like being like, sorry, there's an accident in the bathroom. Can we please go in and clean it up? We wanted like unfettered access of like, we can go whenever we want to go and we don't have to call you first for approval.
And
Just
this
some
is
weird stipulations.
This is a ludicrously wealthy city that refuses to maintain their own property around Barker Reservoir to any reasonable standard by any human person who would look at the
Very, very frustrating.
right? And so this is them taking advantage of the fact that we felt pressure because we got a grant, and that they could exploit that pressure to get more out of us. And it's just bullying, really, and it's really unacceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, that's definitely Chris used the same terms, and so was still way more negotiation. Like I said, the IGA has to be put into place, but that is the biggest change here. And so we will get a new site plan from Confluent Designs, removing those pieces, and he wasn't going to charge us to do that, which is great. Get that into the site plan, and then we are working on the irrigation pieces. Some really great designs are coming forward, and once we really land on the final plan, we'll send it your way. But the drip system actually tackles not just this northern part of the wastewater treatment plant, but kind of it hits all these areas for not a ton of money, which has been really pleasant to see that he's been able to help us come up with a way of using gray water in some of these areas to address that landscaping. So I think something great came out of that, and the addition about moving this whole landscaping north, we're going to see a better results because of it.
Good. By the way, Miranda, these maps that you're bringing up are excellent. I can actually see them and make sense out of everything on them. They're really great.
So this is what we're paying up to $10,000 for these maps to be developed through the landscape architect. This is the Confluent Design, the landscape architects that were part of one of the budget line items. So yeah, this is their actual job, is to develop these maps with specificity. Would you be able to pull up the irrigation map, Miranda?
Yeah, I was like, I need to just pull that up. Again, it's not in its final stage, but let me pull that up so everyone can see what we're looking at. one.
So this is kind of why we had to reduce some of the funding to really get these maps to be so detailed, to help with the public works kind of ease of actually producing.
Good investment.
Mm-hmm.
So here is what, again, it doesn't have all the details in it yet, and that's why we're still in progress. But in essence, these lines are going to show where your system is going to move through with a combination of potable and non-potable water coming out of the different facilities, and then over here, and it actually then carries up to the end of our trail system here.
Are you able to confirm whether this it keeps it open for the use of grey water? Did you just say that? Did I just miss that?
It does, and so that's the part. So we actually too. It does allow for the use of gray water, which is actually coming out of here. Now this is inside though. This is inside, if I recall correctly. This is inside the fence line.
Yeah.
Which is where Chris wants to start. It still does not remove the possibility of using gray water at a later time for these other areas.
Okay.
Currently, we can definitely use it. So it's a great start trying it out here for this 2 through 6. And then we'll see how it goes and do it for the northern part if we can.
Would anyone mind to? I think we might have someone from the public who maybe would like to speak on it. Can I open it up for public comment?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Great. Yeah, if there is anyone, if anyone is there out there has got any questions on this, please do go ahead and ask us anything. We are more than happy. Otherwise, we're just trying to keep this in the public sphere too, and make people kind of aware of what is going on with every step of the way here.
So with this, we're not limiting our options. We're keeping our options open, which is good.
Yeah, as far as irrigation goes.
Yeah, so Miranda, these numbers here, what do those numbers represent? Do you know by any chance?
So they are tied to these flag notes here, which you may not be able to see. Let me zoom in.
Oh yeah, could not see those.
Yeah, I'm happy to forward this to you. I just, with kind of the caveat that it's not done yet, but I'll send it your way. And it's just it's the connectivity areas,
Right.
primarily, or
Yeah,
the
I
kind
see
of
that.
split
So that would
system.
be. It seems like those would be the points at which there would be potential access to the water, right? From
Okay.
not just from Public Works, but also potentially just somebody walking by. I mean, would these all be buried? Maybe some of them would be buried, but I guess what I want to be sure of is that we don't put ourselves in a situation where if we do for this, I see that so there's essentially 2 irrigation systems. For that second system, that we would be falling afoul of gray water regulations in the way that it's designed. That's all that I would like to ensure that actually does keep it open to the possibility that we could use gray water there without significant modification of this design. And that would be my only feedback on that right now.
Okay.
Just because I know from reading those regulations myself, it's really all about access to the water. And if the public can access it from some kind of spigot or tap or anything like that, then we're going to have problems.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me tomorrow to just confirm and work with Bob. Bob's been great to work with, who does the irrigation design. And he's with Aqua Engineering. And so we actually split it up, but it did from a cost standpoint. By splitting it up, it made it easier to just kind of move forward administratively and not tie it up in Board of Trustees.
I would love for it to all be gray water. Personally, I think that is it's more environmentally sustainable. It doesn't make sense in a water parched region to water our plants with potable drinking water. And so I understand the idea that maybe we get it up and running with potable water, but I would like to see a kind of push to rapidly transition to gray water once we get it up and running. And I know that there are other trustees who feel the same way about that. So just for the record.
Yeah.
Well, it's in line with sustainability.
Exactly. And that sustainability was like one of the big kind of focuses of the grant too, that we work towards a sustainable park and a sustainable future for the town. So yeah,
Mhm.
I would definitely like to focus in on that. And then the other updates are kind of we are working on sending the contract out to the art installation. We are still working on looking at lodging for them. And we are just beginning to, Miranda, we're just kind of working on the sourcing of wood and then getting the forestry sort yards set up as a location, as a drop-off location for wood. Anything else, Miranda?
No, yeah, I did my accountability check here, Jesse. I did all of my outreach yesterday.
Aw,
So
thank you.
back from now. And so I reached out to hotels. I actually have a meeting with some people who do short-term rental. And so I was just going to ask them if they were interested, just coming up with some sort of housing options for Jason. And then I did reach out to Jason to try to set up some time to do his contract. And the story, I have no updates, but my part of following up is now checked off the list.
Because yeah, just an FYI for the rest of the board, we're kind of meeting every other Wednesday, the subcommittee for this, and then we also met, Miranda and Ariel and I met this Tuesday just to kind of go over some of these things. So this is where this is coming from, kind of just these in between meetings.
Okay, the last meeting I had mentioned something about connecting with BOCO Parks and Open Spaces about maybe getting willows. I've been unable to do that. They've had a change of supervisors or leadership, and right now they're just reorganizing stuff, so I haven't been able to connect with anybody there.
Okay. So yeah, in the next month you can just expect to see. Well, we'll keep emailing some of these updates too, and any of these requests, and then we'll keep add that to the outreach.
I hate to even think this, but what happens if we don't get enough material? I don't want to think that, but what if? What's our contingency plan?
Yeah, I mean we make a little stump. I mean,
Stop escape. Oh, yeah. Okay.
What
Guess
about Gilpin? You know anybody in Gilpin in their government that might be able to provide materials for us?
I mean, does that need to be written into the contract, Miranda, do you think? Does there need to be some stipulation about
Yes.
that? Yeah.
I think so, because I feel like we don't want to commit to funds and,
Yeah.
like what is our kind of breakout plan?
I think that would be smart.
I was going to talk to our attorney about it next week. Yeah, because I think
because if not, we should be able to recoup those funds and to use them in some other way.
I agree, and so I would hope that he would understand, and perhaps that we know that, if we say by whatever September 1st, if we know we have materials, we will.
Okay, so what materials are we talking about here?
The willows and the cottonwoods and what is that? Those are primarily it, right? Or any sort of flexible wood.
Willow, cottonwood, and large diameter woods. He's definitely still interested. He could do some really interesting seating work if it was just pine logs, like thick diameter stuff. He can do really interesting things. He can make drums with really big diameter hardwoods. But other than that, yeah, it's just a whole bunch of.
Could the yard be a source for us for some of that wood?
Yeah, they are aware, and so then is not only hold it for us, can you then store it for us for a while? Otherwise, Public Works, but I haven't. My first request went unresponded to, so I sent a follow up to Cody to see if they could give us the material and hold it for us.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know Nikki, you kind of suggested that we get in touch with Longmont and Boulder Sort Yards too, that they do the same because they have more access to cottonwoods and willows than we do up here.
Oh yeah.
I added that to my email to Cody of just like who's the best person for that as well.
Okay.
You're back.
Yeah, no, good points. So expect to hear updates on that. Please ask any more questions if there's anything more you're kind of thinking on.
So Jesse, when we jump into this next topic, I want to give just kind of a preference statement of returning to in-person if we're ready to go there.
Yes, please.
So I think looking forward to this conversation. One thing I just want to make clear is that the town of Nederland is still technically under a local disaster emergency order, which means that even if you wanted to go back into person meetings, the current meeting participation policy dictates that all meetings are to be held virtually. Doesn't put it off the table that ProSab can't come back together, but we'll want to make sure that there's Board of Trustees approval, that you will be doing something different than the board itself, who will continue to stay virtual. So that makes it a little bit more complicated than what we thought. And then we obviously have the hybrid piece that I'm probably a couple months out on. So like if you're gonna come back into person, it's that everyone's in person. I can't do half and half right now. So you're either all in person or you're all virtual.
Oh, this is the best time of year for person. I hate to be driving in the dark in a windstorm.
I mean, that's very much it. It's on the table. We would just want to make sure we go back to the board, saying that ProSab was going to do something different than the current local emergency disaster order.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like hybrid is definitely the preference for most of us too.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're actually going to bring in a professional company, because I think us trying to piecemeal it together was not quite going to work. And so it's very expensive because we have the tear down piece. It's not like we have a permanent room to set up these complex systems in, and we have to make sure it's something that's mobile. So that is adding another piece to it. And so we're looking at individual cameras per table or whatever that might be, but we also have the bandwidth in that building to support a ton of technological advancements. So there's quite a few hiccups, and hence why it's a priority and we're working towards it. But I would say at least 90 days before we're even looking at potentially testing a hybrid.
Okay.
Because what it becomes, and our attorney advised us, is we have to be mindful of the access situation. You know, we can't be also where limiting people's ability to participate. And so
the public needs to be able to come.
Right, like having a computer on a table where they can't hear you is potentially an access issue. So really doing hybrid right is in our best interest, so that people, you know, we don't open ourselves up to someone saying that they weren't given fair and equal access to participation in a meeting.
Yeah, I think the community center is the right long-term solution. But if we really need an interim solution, is something like the elementary school or the high school or even Hub Ned on the table, or should we just persevere with what we've been doing?
Yeah, that's something that we could definitely look into. You know, I know that Hub Ned does have some capabilities. Obviously, I don't know if they would let us do it for free or charge us. You know, I think it's just a matter of how urgent is it to you. If you feel like you can continue in this setting and it works a little bit longer, then let's keep it. But if this is hindering your ability to do the work you want to be doing, then I think there is definitely an argument for looking elsewhere to hold in person.
Okay.
So, I mean, my feeling on it is basically that the hardest work I think that needs to be done, that really needs to be done in person, is done in subcommittees. I think we can manage these meetings to continue virtually for the time being. It's not ideal. It's not the best way to go, but I think we can manage it. And I think as long as we can meet in person in smaller, subcommittees with only 2 members, so they don't have to be publicly noticed, we don't have to do a hybrid thing there, and we can hash out, those kinds of detailed work that way, then bring it to the full ProSab once that's been done in this format. I think we can hack it for a while longer. I mean, there's just fundamentally some people Nederland has a very low vaccination rate, and there are people who are comfortable moving back to in-person at the BOT level and at other levels. And so Yeah, it just doesn't seem. I mean, I know a lot of other towns in the area have gone back in person, and I know from speaking to some other trustees and other city councilors from other towns that, you know, there's a sense that I don't know, that there's a ability to get the kind of public feedback that maybe is less comfortable when things are online. And so there was that motivation, I think, to go back in person from some towns and municipalities. And I don't think that makes a big difference for us here in Ned. So
Yeah, personally, I love being able to access all the meetings online. I feel like I go to more meetings now that I can do them from home. I feel like I can be more involved in that.
yes, and I find that to be a problem for myself and my own sanity that I can go, so I do, right? But you know, I would prefer to be in person. I see now that it's kind of impractical to try to do it at this point, and that we kind of need to go back when we're really fully set up to be hybrid.
Yeah, for the public can participate in a way where they don't feel forced to come if they're not comfortable doing that is pretty important.
And we do have the funding set aside. The hope is for sooner of figuring out how do we make it work given our unique situation. And maybe someday we have a dedicated room for boards. I mean, that would be, of course, the long-term goal. So bear with us. We're working on it. And of course, you know, but a big thing too is even when we do go and the board ends a local emergency order, they need to adopt a separate virtual meeting policy. Because currently, like say they lifted the order today, we'd have to go back to in person with no other options.
Right.
So there is some work on, and that's gonna, you know, there are some sunshine law components, you know, while we do chat here, we disable the chat for Board of Trustees. There's a lot of pieces there where you can't, you know, engage in side conversations through chat. And so creating policies and procedures over that will be important.
Okay. Anything else on this one? Otherwise, other business. And I do have a quick other business to raise here. I think it should be quick. I just was wondering, particularly a question for maybe Eric and Miranda. I saw that the 525,000 has been allotted for the Big Springs egress, and I wondered if there's anything you could share as to what that involves and what that means going forward.
Yeah, there's so means is putting it. So we were meeting with Richter next week. Committee that Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think has ever met, that consisted of you, the mayor, fire department, Trustee Corwin, pulling that team back together.
Yeah, I mean, me and Trustee Corvalin and Rick Durr have met, but not with the mayor. Yeah.
Yes. We're revisiting that full committee. So we're going to meet with Rick Durr next week to talk about the time frame of moving forward on this project. We also have to get with obviously Congressman Neguse and how the funds will be allocated to us and what format, and I'm sure enter into some sort of written agreement with them. But yes, exciting news. We just now have to execute it.
Yeah. I guess I would just request to kind of be linked in on some of these. If there's any meetings happening, we definitely would like to hop in.
And when you say moving forward, I mean, Jesse and I went on a walk and we walked through that area. So it does seem kind of dumb to be tearing up the valley option that's, I guess, currently approved. So where are we with that? Or is that like it's over?
That's a good question. And so it's my understanding that the intention is to move forward with the kind of the Doe Trail. So you have the two routes, but they were going to move forward with the Doe Trail one. And I know there was a private driveway issue. And so the thought was to kind of pull it right up to that driveway and kind of figure it out from there. No, again, that those pieces haven't been fully fleshed out. And so that is
I guess that's kind of our question, is that the route we need, the actual route needs to be approved. Like this ProSab does not approve of the previous approval. in any way, shape, or form. And it sounds like neither does Trustee Corvalent and neither does the fire chief. So everyone on the subcommittee is in agreement that the prior approval is incorrect and should not be the route that we move to.
Yes, and I have talked to Trustee Corvalin about this, and I'm not really sure why she seems to be not interested in doing this, but I would like to formally unapprove the previous Valley route at the
Yeah,
DOT
we should
level.
make the recommendation. And so for those that didn't do it, right now, it's kind of like they want to come up here and then basically come up this side of the hill and then start zigzagging around. The goal is to get here.
Yeah, to get
And
up
so
onto that road.
this is like the approved option is to come up here and tear up this whole spring. The other
Right.
option was somehow tee into these driveways
Yep.
on private property and then come up here. And then we walk this other area where I guess this is land that's for sale or something, but there's like a little driveway thing that kind of comes up, and you could kind of come up this way where you're not tearing up the
Right.
wetlands. And so I just want to say we should be talking to whoever about, like, we don't recommend that we tear up this spring.
So I guess that would probably need to be added as an item to next month's agenda if ProSab needs to formally vote on whether we would like to unapprove the prior approval.
Now, the NPP, so I haven't been overly involved in this meeting, but the NPP process we go through where, we'd be coming to all the boards and commissions to get your feedback. And so I do think it's important to put this on your next agenda, and I will also mention that to them when we meet, that ProSab wants to weigh in and change, what your recommendation is, alter it based on new discussion.
Even the Boulder County Commissioners requested that particular route was altered. They were not happy with that route, the Boulder County Commissioners. So I think we really need to take their advice into account too.
Yeah, I think the issue right now is that there's a lot of nervousness around the fact that the previous BOT approved a route that now nobody actually approves of, right?
Yeah.
So we have this approval that is like on the books that we really don't want to be in a situation where somebody makes the argument, well, we've got the money. So
it was already approved.
And it's already approved, so we have the right to start tearing it up. And I really do not want that to happen. And that is making people nervous. So I think it makes sense for it to come onto the BOT's agenda. I mean, ProSab or not, it doesn't really matter what we say. It needs to come to the BOT's agenda. We've already indicated we do not approve of that.
Yeah, is that something that you're able? I'm worried with the timeline now that this has been allotted and it is moving forward, and yet there's a meeting next week, and that we're in the dark about what route this is even being discussed here.
So I would recommend. So my assumption, and I cannot talk to Mayor Larson, would be he will bring this up during his staff report, which would be a good time definitely for Eric to chime in, and then to keep this on future agendas, but it is not currently listed as its own discussion item. Now, again, given this press release, Mayor Larson may want to change that. And so I can let you know. I'll talk to him tomorrow. I'll let you know if he decides he does want to make this a formal discussion item, in which case members of ProSab, it would be great if you could show up to speak to your concerns. But I'll send an email and let you know.
You want me to send you a screenshot of that so you can have something to point to?
Yeah, and thank you, John. If that does come up in a BOT meeting, I would really appreciate if you would be able to come, since you have now walked the route too. And same for anyone else, if they're interested in walking the route and seeing it in person, it really does help to be there on the ground and look at what we're talking about and feel it and see why the issues are so important that we're talking about. It's hugely important for safety, for environmental reasons. Netherlands has just passed this watershed resolution. We should be protecting these wetlands and this watershed and this creek, and all the safety considerations that need to go.
And I will say, it's so important to show up and say something, and not just write in a comment. Writing in comments is not effective.
No,
it simply is not. You have to show up and say something out loud during the meeting. And
The 2 minute of public comment is
Yeah.
is so important. So yeah,
and
please
you know, the other voices that we're hearing are people who say
get it
there's
done
no
now.
that there's no such thing as old growth forests, that there's no such thing as, you know, wetlands or whatever, or that, you know, this idea that like, well, safety of human life is worth more than all of that. So who cares where the
Even
root
that
goes?
argument falls
Let's just
apart
rip it up.
because that argument
Exactly. It's actually less safe for humans.
that route is less
Right.
safe, and it has been identified by Colorado Parks and Wildlife as being potential like danger, and it could act as a fire chimney. It could be absolute. It could be incredibly deadly.
Yeah. It would be a pointless waste of $525,000 if we built the road there. A complete pointless waste, even if you don't consider the environmental concerns at all.
Yeah, just for human safety.
So
it
which
would-
meeting do we show up for?
I think I have to confirm, you know, I would recommend this, well, because if Mayor Larson does it as his staff report, there is no public comment. And so I will talk to him. I think it's in his best interest to bring this up as discussion, given the press release, but I'll ask him tomorrow what he wants to do. And then I'll send ProSap an email letting you know the plan for this.
Yeah, this is really an issue that the public and the residents of the neighborhood deserve to speak on.
But this is the thing. We also need yes, there are many residents of the neighborhood who are against it going through that valley, but there are not all, and there's also private interest in it not going on the ridge because they're concerned about access to their private drive, right? So it's not a question just of like the neighbors, or
No.
it's a question of like
Scientific
so
analysis.
looking broadly here at what actually makes sense for
Mhm.
what we're trying to accomplish. And if we're going to build a road that doesn't accomplish a viable egress route in the case of a wildfire moving from the west to east in the Big Springs neighborhood, then we should not do the project.
Yeah, and this is why the subcommittee has been meeting. Myself as the chair of ProSap, we're meeting with a board of trustee member and the fire chief, and we're all in agreement on this. So the whole like the analysis of this subcommittee needs to be forwarded as valid part of this discussion, which I don't feel like it is right now, which is very disappointing.
No, it's not. And it's not because there are people who are still thinking we can build the trail through the valley. And that's a fact. I mean, no one will say it because it's unpopular, but that's a fact. And we
Mhm.
need to make sure that the BOT will vote against that. And I am not convinced right now
No.
that it would.
Wow.
This is why we've been requesting for a SWOT analysis to be done as soon as possible. We need to like have a specific analyzed list of the strengths and weaknesses, the actual like CPAR analysis of some of this stuff too.
We really need to look past all the back padding that's going to be going on about getting this money from the federal government. It's not that gargantuan an effort, to be perfectly frank.
No.
We got it, fine, but it needs to be for something real that actually benefits our town, not just another accomplishment on somebody's CV.
No, this egress needs to function as a real egress. And not just because it was approved prematurely before the actual scientific analysis occurred. So yeah, we'll definitely I'll add this to the next agenda as a formal recommendation and even an action item if we need to make a formal vote kind of on this. And then hopefully we'll send out some more information to see if this is being discussed in the nearer future too.
Miranda, do you happen to have the agenda item that was used to approve the initial Doe Trail route through the wetlands?
Yes, I'm sure somewhere. You mean from the one before the Board of Trustees, or are you talking
from the Board of Trustees?
Yes.
From the Board of Trustees, because I think it would be great for us to look at that resolution and then formally vote on whether or not we, as a newly seated ProSap, agree with it.
Because I was at the Boulder County Commissioners hearing in 2019 on this very issue when the Boulder County Commissioners requested specifically that alternate routes were analysed, which I have not seen the results of any other analysis being performed. So it's concerning. It is literally a matter of life and death. So it's not something to be taken lightly.
So was there any emphasis or discussion on the sustainability aspect besides the safety?
Yeah, the Boulder County Commissioners did also request that an alternate route was looked at because of environmental issues, because it is a wetland area, and because there are certain species of goshawk, owls, and there's some other animal species and environmental issues that they would like it to see diverted out of this area. Rhea Ortner is also interested in analysing the soil in the area because she believes it might be old growth soil even in the area, which also would add another layer of reason to protect that lower half a mile. So yeah, there's a ton of reasons that really need to be looked at hard and make sure this is the right decision. So I think you can
do this tracker from home, but I will send that when I do tomorrow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a pretty important one. I don't have anything further to add to this item. Do you, Eric or John or anyone? Otherwise, we'll keep up with this. Any other business? All right, sounds good. If that is the case, thank you very much for everyone attending. Thank you for the members of the public for attending. That's much appreciated. It's really nice to see some people kind of hop in and listen and get involved, and you're very welcome. And on that note, 9:12 p.m. meeting adjourned.
Okay, thank you all. Very productive meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you all.
Bye.